What's up, H-Town? Welcome to the Believe in Astros podcast, your home for all things Astros, with your hosts, sports writer Jeff Balke and Astros broadcaster and former third baseman Jeff Blum. Now, here's Balke and Blummer.
What is up, Astros fans? Welcome to episode 74 of the Believe in Astros podcast on the Believe Podcasting Network. I'm Jeff Balke alongside my partner, Jeff Blum, looking fresh-faced after his day off. First day off in a while. Blummer, how are you this morning?
Fantastic. Never take for granted a day off, especially after playing 17 straight. The team looked like it. I felt like it, and hopefully this is a new beginning.
Yeah, let's hope so, because that was a tough stretch there at the end. My goodness. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and of course on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe and keep up with us as you give us a follow on Twitter and on Instagram at Believe in Astros. You can find me at Jeff Balke and Blummer at Blummer27 all over social media. Also, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, keep you updated and alerted to new videos. Thanks to everyone who's given us 5 stars and left reviews on Apple. Thanks to all our people who are watching all over the world. I know last week, because we did the Canadian Rush episode, we had a little boost in our Canadian baseball watchers.
There we go.
Which is always good. Hey, you know what? Sometimes you just need a little Getty in your life to help those Canadians enjoy you. So, hey, Canadians should enjoy us, period. We're awesome. Let's be honest.
Right.
Anyway, we love seeing all your comments. Obviously, read them all and all your questions. For example, is Bluebell Dr. Pepper ice cream really any good, Blummer? And that's a question I have. I saw you try it. I saw you try it, and I like the Mr. Pibb reference, which is
dude, people got mad. It was funny. That caused a serious reaction for some people.
Dude, I loved them both growing up. So I was a huge Dr. Pepper fiend when I was a kid.
Yeah, my kids are too.
And I don't drink them anymore. I can't drink all that caffeine and sugar.
No, the sugar gets me. I'm with you.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can't do it. For me, like I have a skipped heartbeat, right? I take medication. It's fine. It's not anything serious. The doctor was like, it's no big deal. Lots of people get it.
No big deal.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. This is what she told me. She said when I went to the cardiologist, when I was 50, I went to the cardiologist a few years ago. And my dad had a heart disease. My dad had pretty serious health problems. The rest of his family very healthy. But I went down and thought, let's just give it a checked out. Let's just check it out just to make sure. Heart in great shape, thankfully. No problems with that. But I had a skipped heartbeat. And my doctor said, it's not a big deal. A lot of people have it. She goes, you just don't want to have it more than 25% of the time, which seems like a lot for a skipped heartbeat. And she said that the only thing, if you do, it can lead to weak heart, which I do not like the sound of at all. So I take anti-anxiety medication for it. It worked like a charm. No more skipped heartbeat. All good.
That's good news.
But caffeine and anything else just exacerbates my levels of anxiety and jitteriness. It's not good. When I was a kid, I used to pound Dr. Peppers like they were water. It just can't have been good for me. But so tell me about Dr. Pepper and Bluebell, though. That is, you figure they would combine. One's from Waco, one's from Brenham. It kind of makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. And you know what? I heard about it. You find out about these things on TikTok and Instagram. And my kids, I come home from the road trip. My kids finally have their hands on, a pint of this stuff or whatever it is, the gallon or whatever, half gallon. And I pull it out and everybody was like, oh my gosh, he ate out of the carton. I'm like, yeah, I took one bite. It's like, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, you yelled at your wife. I'm like, no, we were having a good time. But it tasted like a flat Dr. Pepper. It had the flavor, but obviously they can't create the fizz or whatever's in there. So It just tasted like a flat Dr. Pepper. It was great. But I knew that the Dr. Pibb comment would kind of set some Texans off. So I had some fun with it.
I tell you what, first of all, don't underestimate the power of flat Dr. Pepper. Basically, it's like an all syrup Dr. Pepper, right? When you get it out of the fountain.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Oh,
but they offset it with that Bluebell vanilla that is so good.
I know.
And it's beautiful.
I actually enjoyed it. I still struggle with Bluebell a little bit. My food phobia is over the fear of listeria. Like the last thing I need is a little listeria in my ice cream. But I will say that Bluebell Dr. Pepper is something that would intrigue me into a spoonful. And it's funny that everybody got upset first about eating out of the carton. Who doesn't eat out of the damn carton?
Seriously.
Like, come on, man. It's not like we're
just
serving a group of strangers. Right.
Yeah.
It's your wife. It's your kids. I mean, if they're
I've got my DNA all over this place.
Exactly. So I think people germ out a little too much anyway, but that's just me. I mean, of course, I grew up going fishing with my dad where we would eat like Vienna sausages out of a can and sandwiches with fish guts all over our fingers. So
there you go.
Whatever. I'm saying like back in my day, these kids.
Now, what are all those Gen X videos are going out saying that we're soft? I'm like, dude, we drank out of a hose, man. Come on.
Exactly. Gen X we did our time. We're fine.
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting. And the Mr. Pibb is classic. I actually liked Mr. Pibb a lot when I was growing up.
I didn't mind it. I mean, I was just having a little tongue in cheek, having a little fun.
Everybody just needs to relax. It's all fine. It's all fine.
Everything's you got me fun. Views, man. I'm famous.
That's right. You're Insta famous, plumber. You're Insta famous, and there ain't no goals. Fame like Insta fame.
Yeah, goals.
Exactly. So we got to talk about something less fun, and that's the Astros right now.
I was going to say, we're just skirting the topic here.
The best thing about Monday was there was no game for the Astros to lose. I mean, it's a terrible thing to say.
We could all take a breath. We all had a good Monday.
Yeah, we're all like, because I feel like it was just, it was so hard to watch those games. And I know it was the end of a long road trip, and I get it. I know that must be really difficult, and the end of just 17 straight days of playing. Mm-hmm. But man, this team has just looked uninspired. I mean, what was it? Five losses in 6 games in the last 6 or something like that. Just a very bad stretch for the team. What did you see from them? I mean, was it a lot of it was fatigue, or like what was going on?
No, I think it was a little bit of fatigue. You go up into Toronto and 4-game series. I can't even begin to explain to you. Like a 3-game series, mentally, physically, you're prepared. That 4th day, for whatever reason, seems like you've been in a place for a month. I don't know if it's like dog years when you get to that 4th game for whatever reason. And, Toronto's a great spot. The smoke wasn't bad. I don't know what was going on out there, but everything was great. They played a beautiful first game, but it was very similar to that Milwaukee series where you just pound the hell out of them. And then you kind of show up the next couple of days and you're going, oh my gosh, what happened to our mojo? But you ran into Kevin Gausman and some good pitching. Man, Jose Barrios, man, he looked great. So all of a sudden the Blue Jays look like a team that they can hit, but you get worn down a little bit. And that was a kind of a hot, I mean, I don't think it was high intensity, but there was definitely a little more emphasis on that Toronto series because they are such a good team. Then you get into Cleveland and, you do okay in the first game. And then you just kind of, you go, that first game in Cleveland took the life out of them. That was a 14 inning.
Took the life out of everybody.
But it was such a roller coaster ride, and to have a team come back on you 5 times in one game, I mean, there's a kick in the nuts, and then there's just a kick in the throat. And I mean, that one just kind of took the life out of him because you took basically all 26 guys on that roster, put them in a meat grinder and said, let's show up tomorrow and play. And it makes it kind of tough. I give Belak and JP France a lot of credit because they grinded out those starts, trying to keep their team into it. There just wasn't enough. And I think after that first game coming up, that first game in Cleveland is what wiped them out. Just those next 2 games, it was almost as if they looked at Monday and said, just get us there. And it took forever because that was a 4-hour game, 3-hour game, 2.5-hour game. And I think they were just smoked by the end of it. I think it was exhausting. And I don't blame those guys. I was exhausted. I was just watching and talking.
Right. And of course, on Sunday, they had to start early because Cleveland, they're worried about rain. And so they start the game early, but still it's an early start after. I mean, it's just,
that's a quick turnaround.
It seems like a really exhausting. And I think I texted you during that 14 inning game. I was like, holy holy crap! After little after hours in Cleveland, like that doesn't sound like much fun at all. And yeah, it just feels like the Astros right now are a little bit snake bit. You know, when it comes to some of these games, they just don't. There's that
they're there, but they're not putting it over the top.
Right. There's like some missing mojo or something. And of course, obviously, we have to mention the giant elephant in the room, and that is Yordan's oblique discomfort. As we like to say,
it's a little more than discomfort.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We have no timetable on his return. They basically said they can't even really figure it out for like a week or whatever. I mean, he's going to be out a while. I don't think there's any question he's going to miss some time.
Yeah, well, you know, the obliques, I have too much experience with this, but I know with the oblique, if you feel it, a little bit of a tweak, it's one of those muscles that you completely shut down. You don't say, okay, I'll see if I'll wake up tomorrow and see how it is. You sit there and you go, you hit the brakes and you shut down. You don't swing because there's so much torque going on in that torso that if you do feel that tweak, it leads to a worse tweak the next day. So you completely shut the guy down. So I understand that. That's very similar to what they did to Jose Altuve. Fortunately, his was only a 4 or 5 day deal where he was able to say, okay, that was just that was concerning, but I'm fine. Yeah. This is pain. And if you have the pain, you completely shut it down, give it a week to rest, and then you see where you're at. But obliques that is one of the muscles in a hitter's body, even a pitcher's body. That's you really have to protect. And when you have a guy the caliber of Yordan Alvarez, you say, I'll sacrifice 2 to 3 weeks right here to avoid the 4 to 8 weeks later in the season or 2 weeks from now. That would really be awful.
Yeah, I agree with you. It blows when your team is so not good offensively. And I say not good, and I'm being polite really at the moment.
The first 2 games in Cleveland, I was actually pretty impressed because Abreu showed up and they scored 6 runs in 9 both games back to back. In the regular 9 innings in the first game, they scored 6 runs. In the second game, they scored 6 runs. So you're kind of going, okay, if we score 5 to 6 with this this pitching staff, we should be all right. But there was a combination of not having enough pitching depth.
Right. It's a very complicated, obviously, equation with this team. I sometimes too look at it and think, there's a balance that's just off somehow. Like they have too many at one place, too few at other places. There's certain types of bats they have, others they don't. There's been some talk. Obviously, Dana Brown has said they're interested in getting a bat, perhaps at the trade deadline. One of the things he said is very specific. He's like, he'd like a left-handed bat for a guy that can play multiple positions in the infield and outfield. Well, good luck with that one. I mean, there's only a handful of those guys, period. But also when you add in the fact that as somebody put it, the expanded playoffs are working, right? There are lots of teams competing to be in the expanded playoffs.
It's good for fans, but it's tough for GMs.
Yes, exactly. I mean, because who's going to be selling? Right? Come the trade deadline. I'm not sure.
Royals, Tigers, and
A's.
A's.
Yeah, that's basically it. And like, so you start to wonder, okay, if those are the only, and they don't have that much to offer, right? So you start wondering, where are they going to go for this? Is it even realistic to hope for that? I do think that we've got a couple of teams this week that could be on the Nationals, who are not good. They're at the bottom of the NL East.
This could be a good homestand if these guys are healthy and raring to go.
Yeah, and the Mets too. Like the Mets are really struggling because they have so many injuries.
Drama.
Yeah, exactly. So, but with the Astros, I just think when you're looking at it right now, I don't know if you make a dramatic move. I don't even know if they have the bullets in the gun to be able to pull off a dramatic move. But it does feel like they need something because it feels like they're kind of mired in this sort of starts thinking of Austin Powers, like it's a kind of malaise. It's like I feel like Dr. Evil talking about it's the kind of malaise. What does he say?
It was just the 30-year anniversary of that, so good call.
Yeah, I know. So I feel
that
like
movie coming out.
His father, used to make outrageous claims like he invented the question mark. He would accuse chestnuts of being insolent. So it's like, yeah, I feel like they're in this kind of malaise this right now. And obviously we're getting in the heart of summer, which does not help because, you've had these long stretches. You've been in these situations before, Blummer. Like, how do you gear yourself up and like get yourself motivated for these, dead middle of the summer kind of times when you are struggling and you're trying to figure it out? Do you just keep going at it, or do you make changes? How do you handle it?
You can make changes. The hardest part is when you get, it's like a relationship too. How do you spice it up? You got to start getting creative. You got to start trying some different things. I was a big fan of changing my hair color every once in a while. Whatever it takes. You just got to add a little bit of juice to it to try and invigorate maybe a little more creativity, or get, try something different in your swing. There's all kinds of things you can do, but you are definitely, it feels like the dog days have kind of snuck up on us a little bit, but it's a combination of things. And there's a lot of things that can be attributed to it. It's, it's injuries, it's a length of a road trip, the timing of the road trip, who you're playing, how are they feeling coming in? Because if that team falters and you recognize a weakness and you can take advantage of it, you get invigorated by that. And that could be a situation here with the Nationals and the Reds coming in. That you can take advantage of some bad teams. You're at home, thankfully, and this is an extended homestand too, because you're going to have
10 days.
What do we got? Yeah, we got 10 days at home with with 2 days off wrapped around it before another very long road trip. So hopefully that invigorates these guys a little bit. And, you're heading into the end of June, and then July hits and you're going, okay, now where are teams? You get a better idea of where you're at. And I think one thing that should really perk up, not just Houston Astro fans, but also the team. The Rangers haven't run away with this thing. No. They're playing some tough teams and they're getting beat, and they just lost to the Angels. So you're starting to see some chinks in the armor of the Texas Rangers, and they're starting to show some wear and tear also. So you can kind of look across the way and go, okay, we're not as good as we want to be. We have the potential to get healthy, maybe a big trade, and we can still get these guys in a series, because if they're at back 3.5 games and you go into the end of July and you're facing the Rangers 4 times, you look at a sweep and you could be back in first place. So that's where you kind of look at, you start looking ahead a little bit and going, okay, we got a chance. We got this. If we can just maintain our strength, pick up some key wins here and there, and you'll be all right. But yeah, it's hard. This is a tough time of season. June, July, and I wouldn't say August and September, but June, July are tough months.
I agree with you. Blummer, when you started out that conversation saying that you spice things up, it's like a relationship. And then you mentioned your hair color. I wondered where that conversation was going. And then I realized you were talking about playing baseball. And I was pretty glad, because I was concerned.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that on TV. I can't. There's a number of things that go into that. Number one, I've been married for more than 20 years. So, I've lost a lot of responsibility for my own well-being. And then number two, I'm on TV. I can't make the drastic moves on TV, man.
That's right. You can't change up your hair color anymore. That's it. Yeah. You don't have to wear a tie now. At least you've got that going for you.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. That is exactly right. So looking ahead, we just talked about it here. We've got the Nationals, the Reds and the Mets. The Reds are playing pretty good baseball.
They're exciting. They've got some good ball players, man.
Ellie. Isn't it Ellie? Is that his name? Ellie. Oh, that kid is crazy. Like, I saw that first home run he hit like out of the stadium. Like, what?
Basically. Ooh.
I mean, just super exciting. So I think it'll be fun, but look, I think you're right. This is the time you got to pounce on some of these guys. Like, the Nats are not good. The Mets are not good. And the Mets, look, let's be honest. As much as everybody was predicting they would be good, nobody predicted they would have this many injuries. I mean, they've really struggled with the injury bug.
The guys they were signing they're not old timers, but they're old.
Well,
they've got histories.
And we've said this before, you don't buy teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you cannot buy. No, you just can't. You've got to you can't just buy a bunch of free agents and expect them all to just win. It doesn't work that way, really. I think this is a group of teams, especially the Nationals, where they've just got to come down on them. Like Michael Jordan always used to make the thing about, once you're on top of them, you just got to slit their throat and get it over with, which is a terribly morbid way of putting it. But I think that's what the Astros have got to do.
No, they've got to go out there. They've kind of lost that edge a little bit, but I'm with you in the sense that maybe this day off will kind of invigorate them a little bit. Get the fans. I mean, the fans have been showing up at this stadium, 35,000 plus every single night. So if you can start to dazzle them a little bit, get them behind you, I think it'd be a lot of fun. But if you can get some key guys in this lineup, because Dubon's been raking, you're not going to have the power of Yordan, but at the same time, if you play a good team game of getting on base and then getting that big hit, then you're going to be all right. So hopefully that entire concept of we can do this without Yordan, then you might see that edge come back a little bit.
Well, and also you see him stealing more bases. They took more risks on the base pass.
They abused poor Mike Zunino up there in Cleveland.
They sure did. And like as was mentioned, I think Chandler Rowe mentioned in his column, the Astros have two guys that are on pace for 20 steals this year.
I know.
The last time they did that was like 2015. It was 2016 because it was Altuve and Marisnik was the last time that happened.
Oh, damn. How about that? That's an interesting stat.
It's been a while. So yeah, I mean, when you look at it, they've got Corey Julks on pace for
dude, Julksy cat just getting after it, man.
I've told you before, I'm such a huge fan of Corey Julks. Corey Julks and Yainer Diaz right now. I just love both of them because I think that it's that injection of that youthful energy. There's something about that just,
there's a style of play. There's
an urgency to their game that's just different from guys who've been around. And nothing against the guys that are been around and are really good. It's just there's something about that sort of like,
but this is what you just talked about in the middle of summer. What can we do? What can we adjust? And all of a sudden you got a hungry guy in Corey Julks.
Yes.
You've got Yainer Diaz going, hey, I want an opportunity. And here you go. There's two guys in there that could, kind of invigorate this lineup and kind of go, oh, hey, these guys are doing it. I need to step up.
Yeah, I'm surprised Jake Myers hasn't stolen more bases, considering how fast that guy is. You would think he would get after the base paths. Maybe he will now. I don't know.
This is going to sound terrible, but also the position in the lineup.
Well, yeah, that's
because this is maybe just the manager hat on. I would rather have him get thrown out stealing than have a double play.
Well,
because if he steals the bag, he's in scoring position, or Maldi can move him over, or even drive him in with the base hit.
Right. I know. You're right. I mean, and that is the continued uncomfortable conversation about Martin. Sorry, I'm chewing on a piece of ice. About Martin Maldonado and the fact that he's just an absolute black hole in the lineup. As good as he is reverted.
He had such a good stretch in the later part of May.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest, he's kind of regressed to the mean. I mean, Maldi hasn't really been a good hitter the last 2 or 3 seasons. He's got power, but when he doesn't connect a lot. He strikes out a lot, and it's a problem. And I feel like the fact that Yainer is getting more time in there at DH in particular, he's going to get more time now that Yordan is out. Now that they brought Salazar
that's the reason Salazar's back up too.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, it's a left-handed bat, yes, but it's protection to get Yainer in there a little more often. Yeah,
they've got to get him in there more often because he's just a very good hitter. They've got to get him more at bats because the more
he's
at bats,
a threat.
He is a threat, and I think that also look. Nobody wants to talk about when you're a team that's contending or hopefully contending. You don't want to talk about what's coming, but this is your you've got to get Yainer as many at bats as possible because I would say it's fairly likely that next year he becomes your starting catcher. And if that's the case,
it's trending that way.
Yeah, then you need him to get as many opportunities as you can right now because you don't want in next year when the Astros should be able to contend again, given their talent level. You don't want that guy being in there as essentially a glorified rookie.
Well, and as often as this team is in contention, I think it's good for some of these younger guys to get these at bats through the first 4 months of the season. So you get that experience, you build that database in your skull on how guys are pitching you.
Yep.
You're not overwhelmed by the moments. So when you do get into August and September, when you're starting to push for a pennant or push for a playoff spot, they're not overwhelmed by the situation. And then, of course, October comes around. The more at bats, the more comfortable they're going to be in some of those tighter situations.
It's interesting to me too. I was thinking about this the other day about how the Astros have not just done a good job of finding talent and bringing it up, and the guys like Jeremy Pena and others, what's been really interesting to me is the guys they brought up don't seem to be afraid of the spotlight. Like, you haven't seen guys come up and just wilt in the postseason. Honestly, last postseason, the guys that wilted were veterans, not young guys. And so it's really interesting to me that the guys they bring up oftentimes are just like, all right, like they're just not as affected by it as other people. It seems maybe some temperament, maybe just talent. But you're right. They need to get those guys prepared for this. And I think that's a really good point you make about getting used to pitchers. I mean, how big a deal is that? Like, for yourself, when you were playing, did you just feel better against guys once you had hit against them a couple of times, 2-3 times? Or was or did it depend, obviously?
Well, I mean, you're going to get pitched well. You're going to get some mistakes, but at the same time, if I have the more of an idea I have in my head of how the at bat's going to go, or how they're going to try and attack me, I will have a better chance of having a better at bat. And that's where you kind of wait to see if they're going to adjust off what they've done, and it's pitcher to pitcher, it's situation to situation, because there's certain guys that revert to their comfort zones when they're under pressure, right? And you can start anticipating in that sense, and it's also organizationally too. A lot of these, the Atlanta Braves, they fastball away on the corner early, and then all of a sudden it'd be soft stuff later in the at bat. But all this experience and all of this knowledge helps you, because you do take it, at bat with nobody on base. How are they going to approach me? A runner on first base, I'm hitting left-handed. How are they going to approach me? Runners on second and third, less than 2 outs. What are they going to throw? Where's the defense? I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that. So the more you're in that situation, the quicker you think, and the quicker you think, the more comfortable you're going to be able to react. My gosh, be able to react.
Yeah,
I got excited there for a second.
Hey, it was a day off yesterday. We're all
fired up.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think those are really good points about how that is. And I saw something too, Blummer. I wanted to get your thoughts on. There was a story in The Athletic, I guess it was last week, about why strikeouts continue to rise in baseball. And they took a very scientific, analytic approach to it. And I thought it was pretty fascinating that essentially what they've determined through, watching swings, and I don't know what the hell they do. It's all science. I don't know. It's like whenever I hear that, I'm just confused generally. It's like somebody handing me a calculus equation.
They can get too deep. Yeah.
Sometimes they can. But in this case, they came up with kind of a simple answer to this. And that is, yes, guys are swinging for home runs. So there is more of an uppercut to swings, which definitely creates more swing and miss options. But they said it's not so much the uppercut as the fact that guys are swinging to hit the ball more in front of the plate than ever before. The idea being is that if they swing early, because so many pitches are fastballs, that if they get into it late, it's fine, because if they get to it a little bit late, they can still hit the ball the other way. They can foul it off, whatever it is. But if they hit it on the screws, especially if they're out in front of the plate, there's a better chance of them driving it. And not necessarily for home runs, but just driving it generally. And so they said that what's creating a lot of swings and misses is anticipation. They're swinging a little bit faster and a little bit sooner than they maybe have in the past, because they don't want to connect with the ball over the middle of the plate. They want to connect with it just out in front, because that's where the sweet spot is for them. And I thought that was pretty fascinating analytics. I have no idea if it's true. They say it's true. They say it's science. I don't know, because I don't know crap. But I'm curious about your thoughts on that as an opinion about swings and misses.
Well, they never say anymore, let the ball travel, let the ball get deep. And that was one of those things that we were instructed to do when we were playing, and we weren't facing 100 miles an hour or 95 plus as consistently as these guys are now. So this is a different generation of pitching. Yeah. And in order to drive the ball, shoot a gap, or even drive the ball out of the ballpark, you got to clip it out in front of home plate. And we always, it's where that front foot is usually where contact is. And once you get that front foot down, it's the front of the plate normally. And that's where you're trying to clip that. Because if you're maximizing, it's bat speed, it's, where is the momentum, the peak speed of my swing is out in front of home plate, because I've got to generate a 3-pound bat getting through the zone. I've got to get that thing started early. So if I can clip you, I'm going to clip you out in front, whether the ball's high, middle, or low, but you've got to clip it out in front if you're going to generate the most velocity off the bat. I get that. But at the same time, I think that the simple fact of pitching is pretty damn good these days. So the strikeouts are going to be up. So I'm going to anticipate my first 2 strikes of the at bat. I'm going to try and go out there and jump somebody's ass by getting that barrel out in front, and getting those might be the 2 best pitches, because once I get to that 3rd strike, it could be power spin, it could be power fastball up at the zone, and there's no 2-strike approach anymore. Nobody puts the ball in play. There's very few Mauricio Dubons out there, or Jose Altuves, or Corey Julks and these guys that can actually like punch the ball around a little bit and aren't afraid to let the ball get deep. So I think that's a combination of excellent pitching. Stuff is nastier than we've ever seen in our lives. And number 2, there's no 2-strike approach.
That's interesting. The no 2-strike approach. That kind of surprises me. That guys are just like, well, it's 2 strikes. We're screwed. Let's, on to the next mistake. One. Yeah, right. That's a fascinating thing about baseball that I was not aware of. I'm sure a lot of people were not, but it makes sense. I mean, especially like you said, it's, I think back to when, Bull Durham, and he was talking about the show. He's like, they've got exploding breaking balls. I'm like, whatever. Yeah. It's like, I'm sure it's even worse now. And the spin rates on things, ever since spin rate came into the game, it really has changed so dramatically, how people view pitching. Pitching was always, a grinded out type of thing for long periods of time, right? Now there's so much finesse involved in it. There's so much placement involved in it. And so much of that spin rate, it's kind of unbelievable how much it's changed, really, even since you were a ball player, which wasn't that long ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes. I mean, it feels like ages ago internally, but pitchers are. So we talk about analytics a lot. We talk about video. I think that video and analytics have benefited the modern day pitcher more than it has the hitters. These Rapsodo machines, the ability to slow it down to these, these millisecond of video frames where they can manipulate where their hand is on the baseball, or how their curveball could fit into their arm angle and their release point. There's so much more data there to help these pitchers. But then all of a sudden you say, how do I increase my spin rate? How do I extend through the zone? I mean, there's so much more information that they're able to use. And to their credit, a lot of these organizations, especially the Astros, maximize every ounce of data they get for their pitchers. And that's why they're the best in baseball.
It's so wild. I mean, all that stuff. You really do need advanced degrees now to be able to handle analytics. All right, so here's something a little more simple. I'm not sure if you've seen this, but the Oakland A's tonight, the fans are holding a reverse protest where they plan to fill the entire stadium with fans, the opposite of what is normally happening at the ballpark for them. A lot of them, they raised a bunch of money, and they've sold like something like 7,000 T-shirts that read "Sell the Team" on them. And let me tell you something. This is exactly the type of fan activism I can get behind. This is, I mean,
and you'd expect it in Oakland too.
Of course. And what's great, I think that look, as someone who went through the whole, like, whether would they or would they not leave with the Rockets, and then yes, they did leave with the Oilers. I can tell you that what fans do and how they respond in the moment is a critical component of what happens with teams. For example, with the Oilers, when they said they were going to leave, there's this famous video of like 10 people showing up at City Hall to say, please don't leave, Oilers, or whatever. It was sad, and it became a narrative. It didn't matter that the Oilers had a radically intense fan base. It was just that one moment in time was the narrative. And by the way, not just the like national narrative of what was described about the Oilers or whatever, but also the narrative for politicians who are, they want to know what's going to get their toast buttered when it comes to the election.
Gee, they're complicating things. Weird.
I know. And so the Rockets, it was the same deal. When the second referendum came around, fans were involved. There was a push to local politicians, and guess what happened? That all of a sudden the politicians were like, oh, people do care, right? And I remember thinking there was a time, I remember George Pistolos, who was the president of operations for the Rockets at the time, he said that the narrative changed so quickly with politicians that prior to them once they had lost that first referendum in 1999, they couldn't get a politician on the phone to talk to them. But after all the fans and everybody started chirping and saying, we want the team back, the politicians were calling them to discuss it.
Oh, wow.
And that's how things like that change. So I'm not saying the A's are going to suddenly force Oakland to sell the team or do anything like this, but this is exactly the type of thing that changes those narratives.
Yeah, and it's a different time. I mean, you've got social media, you've got too many avenues for too many voices, and the world of politics, good Lord, is crazy as it is.
Fraught.
But, you kind of nailed it with the fact, how does this benefit me? And not necessarily in how does it benefit my constituents? And I think that's where things have gotten kind of lost. So I think that's an excellent point by you. But at the same time, go A's fans. I mean, if you have the opportunity and you have the creativity and you've got the momentum, use it in the best possible way. Put the T-shirts on, show up. I know that a lot of the angst and hate is going towards the ownership. Keep it there.
Right.
Cheer your asses off for these players.
Exactly.
These players are stuck in the middle. The coaching staff is stuck in the middle. Your broadcasters are stuck in the middle. Cheer your brains out. Show these players that you can support them and you do support them and you want them to stay in Oakland. I think that's the biggest thing. And I can't wait to see what happens. I think it's very interesting to follow it online. I think the whole situation going on in Vegas is very interesting, and it's exposing what the A's front office inability to have any kind of feel is or knowledge on the situation, it feels like.
Well, it's just unbelievable that they would just be like, oh, yeah, we're going to move to Vegas, by the way.
Of course they'd love us down there. I asked this question a while ago. I'm like, does Vegas even want this organization?
There are parts of me, it's like, does Vegas even know? Are they even aware that the A's are saying, hey, by the way, we're coming to Las Vegas? And you can see the people in Las Vegas going, I'm sorry, what? What are you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? It's like, I can't even imagine like waking up one morning and you're the freaking, you're a bunch of politicians in Las Vegas and you're like, the A's say they're moving to Las Vegas. Yeah. Anybody heard about that?
Yeah.
And and the truth is, you're right. Fans cheer on the team. I mean, look, they're in as bad a spot as the fans are, quite frankly. They don't know what to do. They're trapped, They're trapped. I remember seeing the Oilers when they were in their lame duck season. And like they were, they didn't know what to do. They'd get interviewed. Jeff Fisher was the coach. And he'd get interviewed and he'd be like, I feel terrible for the fans, but what are you going to do? It's like in some ways I feel like it was better when the team moved in the middle of the night, right, or whatever. Just packed up all their stuff and just moved out in the middle of the night. Seemed like maybe a better way to do it than just avoid all this awfulness. But yeah, go A's fans. I'm 100% behind it. Also, we would be remiss if we did not mention the fact that Fox 26 local sportscaster Mark Berman retired last night. His final broadcast. Berman been around for decades. He's essentially the insider in Houston. I remember one time I was at a press conference at the Toyota Center. I don't remember what it was for, years ago. And I saw that on his Twitter feed that that day, he was there, of course, that he had been at Minute Maid, he had been at the University of Houston and at the airport. Like interviewing somebody at the airport. The guy was relentless. I mean, just relentless for decades. And so good for him for finally getting to retire. I mean,
I didn't think the day would ever come. To be honest, because of what you just said. I mean, the dude was a hustler. I give him credit for is that's probably how he started, and that's how he's going to finish, is being that hustler. So, great career. He was a Houston sports, I wouldn't say icon, but he was definitely legend in that sense that he knew everything, was plugged into everything. He scooped everybody, it felt like, on every situation, which was remarkable. Yet he still kept his wits about him to be able to give me a fist pump every day that I've seen him as a player and as a broadcaster. So Mark Berman, all the best to you. I know he's still got a daughter in the business who I've talked to every once in a while. So his roots are dug deep into the city of Houston and the sports industry. So he's earned the retirement. Hopefully he's able to enjoy it and not make those phone calls and get those scoops out there too often, because I know he's going to have the itch. But at the same time, all the best. Yeah, all the best to you, Mark.
I love that he even got a scoop on like his last day, reporting that Kelvin Sampson had signed a new contract.
Got the extension,
It's just. I mean, the guy's amazing. He's relentless. I did not get to know him at all. I actually, the last time I was up at the Astros game, I saw him and I introduced myself and told him I really appreciated everything he had done. He's just, what a career. You know, I mean, there's certain. It's funny. I was at a mayoral candidates forum last night. That was, my wife works for the opera, and it was a candidates forum on the arts, and so we went. And Linda Laurel was the host. Of course, Linda Laurel was on Channel 2 for like forever. So these people become a part when you're in a city for a long time and you're around local news. They become a part of sort of your everyday life. And you know, so it's cool to see them get a chance to take off on their own terms.
Yeah, finish the way they want. Great
absolutely.
career.
One more thing before we get going. Did you see the UT Stanford? What happened during
I freaking hate Stanford.
I mean, are you kidding me? UT loses out on a chance to go to the College World Series because they lost the ball in the lights on a walk-off.
Boo. Boo.
I know. Of course you hate Stanford, Blummer. You're from Cal.
Hate Stanford.
Exactly. And
Go Bears.
And it was just so awful. The kids from UT are just,
the kids from UT, I know Stevie Rodriguez is on their coaching staff. Woody Williams is on their coaching staff. I think Tulowitzki. Damn, are you kidding me? You get to that point and that's how you lose that game? It's unbelievable that, you know, oh man. And this is my conspiracy theorist hate of Stanford, is that they timed that game perfectly to be in a situation where that's their home field advantage somehow, some way. They're like, well, if we get a pop-up and it does, you know, there's some, I don't know. I hate Stanford.
The Blummers hate all over the place, man. It's like me and the
mascot's a tree. Come on. What are we doing?
It's like me and the Utah Jazz. This is going to get me started.
Oh, the entire city of Houston, Vernon Maxwell, and us against the Utah Jazz. Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was it. If you haven't seen the video, go online and look it up.
It's terrible, though, because you can see the two outfielders just going, oh, my, what? Oh.
They don't know. And then they're just afterwards, they're just like, oh, what happened?
There's back-breaking losses. That was soul-crushing.
That was just, that one hurt. And I'm not even I went to UT for a year, so I guess I'd consider me somewhat of a part of that of that college, but I didn't care that much about it. And then I saw it, and I'm like, oh, I hurt for them. Well, Blummer, U.S. Open is this weekend, buddy. And
you're damn right it is.
And here's the thing, though. It's at the Beverly Hills Country Club. Have you read anything about this
LA
place?
Country Club. Los Angeles Country Club. Yeah.
Have you read anything about this? I mean, this place is insane. Like, they didn't allow minorities or Jewish people until like the 80s. Women up until like 15 years ago had to wear skirts. And the Playboy Mansion is on the 13th hole. What the hell?
Lionel Richie's house is on there somewhere too, man.
No. And by the way, they are famous for never allowing celebrities to play on the golf course. Ever.
Love it.
Like nobody. Like, in fact, Bing Crosby bought a house on the golf course specifically so he could get membership, and they were like, nope, no celebs. That is a crazy. I read the story about it today.
Well, everybody makes all this fun about Augusta being this this impenetrable fortress. How about LA Country Club?
Nothing compared to. Now they're loosening it up now. In fairness to them, which they probably should, because apparently the course is incredible. It's like it's like through canyons and shit. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be unbelievable.
No, you drive through Wilshire Boulevard and you're like, wait a minute, there's a golf course behind those trees? I grew up in Southern California and I was like, I had no idea this place even existed.
A couple of guys have said the biggest concern for them is how the hell are they going to get there? Because of all the traffic and everything. I mean, it's
traffic,
right in the
parking,
middle of LA.
405s right there. It's miserable. But
go. You've been there. I mean, it should be fun. I'm very interested to watch a little bit of it just because no one plays there. Like, no one plays. It's going to be new to everybody. It's going to be new to spectators.
Well, I think the last time they said the U.S. Open was played there was back in the 50s.
Yes, that is correct. Now they have had a couple of smaller like tournaments there, not PGA, but like I think LPGA had a tournament there and a couple of smaller
qualifiers and stuff like that.
Qualifiers. But basically no one plays there unless you're like a wealthy person in Los Angeles who has a connection. So it's just weird. I love the fact that one of the golfers said when he played there on that course, I forget who it was, said that occasionally you'd play that 13th tee. He said the best time to play was on a Sunday morning because there would be people passed out around the pool at the Playboy Mansion. It's like, are you kidding me? By the way, so Hugh Hefner also denied access to the golf. He actually asked them if he could get a gate that opened him, and they denied it. They're like, no, you cannot have a gate.
Could you imagine the riffraff of the big falling out of that gate?
Falling out is the appropriate way of putting it too, because there would be a lot of things falling out around the Playboy Mansion. All right, Blummer. Let's see. So you're back at it tonight. Back on the call. What do you? Are you? I've been meaning to ask you this for a while. Are there times before? Like, are there any times before games where you're like, I've got to slip this in one way or the other? Like, you just have to get something into the broadcast.
I mean. There are moments. There are moments, and I have these flashes of brilliance maybe in the middle of the afternoon, and I completely forget them. And when game time comes around, because there's so much information just inundated into our shows, and there's 75,000 elements we've got to get into our show. So it's kind of hard to mix it in there. And that's why like Weird Word Wednesday sometimes creates a little bit of an issue, because I have to legitimately create an avenue to get the word in because there's nothing else leading me to it. No, I got Todd the other day. I think it was when Gray Kessinger just got called up, and I said something like hotty toddy in reference to Ole Miss. And then I said, I said something to the effect of, and no, I'm not talking about my partner. and he kind of folded right there real quick. And I was like, yes, I got him, So every once in a while, I think more about it. I'm going to try and be a little more proactive I need a notebook, and I need to write it down.
You need to talk about the Dr. Pepper ice cream. I think should definitely make an appearance. Also, I have one for you that I found. Something I posted a while back. I know this is more used in the NBA than baseball, but the term "ball don't lie" is something I've always loved because there's something great. Ball don't lie. Idea that if something happens and then something good happens after, you're like, ball don't lie. So a few years ago, somebody was saying, come up with weird, terms for things that are colloquialisms like ball don't lie, but in a way that's more that people have to guess what you're actually saying. So mine was orb eschews obfuscation, which is basically, I was like, orb eschews obfuscation. I was like, ball don't lie. So I thought that's one that
rolls off the tongue.
It does. It's fantastic. So I've been thinking that's my thing lately is I'm going to start looking up weird little phrases.
We had a broadcast a little while back where it was after Julia went. I think it was a Saturday night. She went to Janet Jackson.
Right. And your wife went.
Next day. My wife was there. They had a great time. So was Callis's wife. And the next day I was, I think I put in there Rhythm Nation.
I was going to say the Rhythm Nation has to go in there. Yeah, you got to do it. You got to be, the easiest way goes if somebody's hitting one, you'd be like, man, he's part of the Rhythm Nation.
Mm-hmm. And it was like when the Astros scored a bunch of runs, I go, it just seems like these guys are all a part of the Rhythm Nation and stuff like that. Yeah, I'll try and get song titles in there.
The easiest one is "What Have You Done for Me Lately?" I mean, that's the easiest one to get in there. But Rhythm Nation is solid. That's a good. That's what I always tell. Whenever I wear a jacket where the shoulders are a little big, I'm like, listen, I'm just part of the Rhythm Nation. Because that video, that's great, Blummer. Song. I remember there was some broadcast years ago where somebody worked in all of the lyrics to Hotel California into the entire game. Yeah, they're like, the champagne's on, the pink champagne's on ice. They're just prisoners of their own device. They just, I forget who it was, but it was somebody worked them all in. It was like kind of a famous. So yeah, I mean, anytime you can work in some song lyrics, that's awesome. I'll keep an eye out for it. I always think it's funny if somebody, can slip that in.
Especially fun with it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. We will be back on Friday, ahead of my vacation, by the way. Next week, Blummer, I will be doing this from the beach. So my plan is to be on the deck with the water at my back.
Just having the ocean lapping at your rear end.
That's right. Doing a nice little podcast. Maybe I'll have a fresh beverage with me. That is absolutely my plan. So, but we'll have another podcast later this week on Friday, brought to you by Bet Online. A big thanks to all our listeners and viewers all over the place. And again, all over the world. Lots of, just like you said, Austria, Canada, England, Australia. G'day.
We are expanding our horizons.
We are doing everything we possibly can. You guys are great. Liking, subscribing, and commenting. Send us more questions. We love it. Super thankful for everybody. So have a great week. We'll see you on Friday. And as always, go Astros.